I was halfway to the door, purse in one hand, coat in the other, when I heard my own son laugh. Not the polite laugh he used with clients. Not the soft one he used with his children. This one was cold. Sharp. Cruel. Hook, line, and sinker, he said. I froze. My phone was still pressed to my ear. I hadn't hung up. And now, standing alone in my quiet kitchen at 79 years old, I was about to hear how my family planned to destroy me. 5 minutes earlier, I had been smiling. Actually smiling. Because for the first time in months, my son had invited me to something. A birthday dinner for my grandson. A family gathering. You'll come, won't you, Mom? He'd said cheerfully. Everyone will be there. My heart had fluttered like a foolish teenager's. Of course I would come. Of course. Then came the part one should have expected. Oh, and Mom, could you just send a little money to my wife's account? The restaurant needs a deposit. It was a small amount. Nothing dramatic. I sent it without hesitation. I always did. Thank you, Mom. You're an angel, he said. I heard movement. Papers. Chairs. Then a girl's voice, my granddaughter, clear as day. Did she fall for it again? My breath caught. Yes, my son replied, laughing. She always does. Another voice joined in. My daughter-in-law. Good. At dinner we'll push the house paperwork again. This time she'll crack. My grandson added cheerfully. Once she signs, we can finally sell that place. Old people don't need houses that big anyway. Then my son said the sentence that split my heart in two. She's too stupid to realize we've been draining her for years. The world tilted. My knees hit the chair behind me. And in that moment, everything I believed about my life collapsed. But let me tell you how I got there. Because betrayal like that doesn't begin with cruelty. It begins with kindness. And loneliness. And a widow who just wanted to feel loved again. My name is Margaret Hale. I am 79 years old. And until recently, I believed family meant safety. After my husband passed away, the love of my life, my anchor, my best friend, my world went quiet in a way I didn't know silence could exist. The house echoed. The clock in the hallway ticked so loudly at night, I sometimes begged it to stop. I took up painting to keep myself from disappearing. Every morning, I painted sunrises from my apartment window. Soft gold. Pale blue. Gentle hope. My son, Daniel, called me every Sunday. Not warm. Not cold. Just efficient. How are you feeling, Mom? Fine, dear. Good. Kids are busy. Work is crazy. Click. That was love now. Surface-level conversations and polite endings. Then the visits started. First my granddaughter, Lena, crying about rent. Then my grandson, Marcus, with a business opportunity. Then my daughter-in-law admiring my jewelry. Oh, this necklace is stunning. Are you sure you don't want me to hold on to it for you? And I gave. Because that's what mothers do. That's what grandmothers do. I gave money. I gave jewelry. I gave furniture. I gave pieces of my life. And I told myself I was lucky they still needed me. The only person who warned me was my sister. Margaret, she said bluntly one afternoon. They're not visiting you. They're harvesting you. I laughed. Don't be dramatic. I wish I had listened. Then came Victor. A widower with silver hair and a terrible sense of rhythm. We met at a dance for seniors. He stepped on my foot and said, "Ah, perfect. Now we are officially partners in crime." I laughed for the first time in years. We went to museums. We shared coffee. He told me I painted like someone who had survived something. And my family hated him. Scammers target lonely women, my son warned. He's foreign, my daughter-in-law added. You can't trust people like that. They bullied me. They shamed me. They told me loving again was disrespectful to my dead husband. So I ended it. And went back to being alone. Which made me easier. Much easier. Until the day my son forgot to hang up. And I learned the truth. That my family had meetings about my money. That they tracked my accounts. That they planned to move me into cheap care and take my house. That they called me weak. Stupid. A resource. Not a mother. Not a grandmother. A bank account with wrinkles. I sat there in the dark for hours. holding my cold tea, listening to the clock. And for the first time since my husband died, I didn't feel lonely. I felt angry and very, very awake. By sunrise, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront them. I was going to disappear. And I was going to make sure the next time they looked for my money, they found nothing. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying, because my brain would not stop working. Every laugh I had heard on that phone call replayed in my head like a broken recording. She's too stupid. Once she signs, drain her. 79 years of loving people who were already planning my funeral and my bank transfer. By sunrise, my grief had hardened into something sharper. Resolve. The first person I called was my sister. Ruth, I said the moment she answered. I need you to come over. Right now. Her voice changed instantly. What happened? My family happened. She arrived 40 minutes later, still in her slippers, hair pinned in a crooked knot, holding 2 cups of coffee like weapons. I told her everything. Every word. Every laugh. Every plan. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she set her cup down very carefully. Then she said calmly, that sentence hurt worse than the phone call. Ruth pulled out a notebook. We start today, she said. Quietly. First stop, the bank. I walked in like a harmless old woman with shaky hands and a soft voice. Inside, I was a general planning a war. I removed my son from every account. Closed the joint checking. Changed every password. Opened new accounts in a different branch across town. When the clerk hesitated and said, "Are you sure you want to remove your son's access?" I smiled sweetly. Very sure. Then the credit cards. Then the investment accounts. Then the emergency contact forms. By lunchtime, my family had officially lost access to every dollar I owned. They just didn't know it yet. Next came the lawyer. Not my son's elder law friend. A woman Ruth trusted. Sharp eyes. No nonsense. Hair in a bun that screamed courtroom victories. After I told her everything, she leaned back and said something that chilled me. Your son is going to claim you're mentally unstable. My stomach dropped. They always do, she continued. It's the fastest way to regain control. We're going to protect you before he tries. We rewrote my will. Removed my son as executor. Named Ruth instead. Created a trust. Locked my house into it so it couldn't be sold without my permission and 2 doctors signing off on my sanity. She even documented the phone call incident in case they tried to accuse me of dementia later. By the end, my hands were shaking. Not from fear. From relief. That night, my phone exploded. First my son. Then my daughter-in-law. Then both grandchildren. Missed calls. Texts. Voicemails. Mom, call me, something's wrong with the account. Grandma, did you change your bank? Please answer, we're worried. Worried. I laughed out loud for the first time in weeks. Oh, now you're worried. I didn't answer a single one. Instead, Ruth and I toured retirement communities. Nice ones. With art studios. Security. Gardens. Places my son had once called a waste of money. I put down a deposit that same day. Somewhere they would never expect me to choose. Then came the birthday dinner. The trap. The night they planned to charm me into signing away my life. I didn't show up. No gift. No message. No explanation. That's when they panicked. They showed up at my house the next morning. All of them. Knocking. Ringing. Pounding. Mom, open the door. Grandma, please. I watched from the hallway. Silent. Still. Heart hammering. After an hour, they left. But that evening, I saw my son's car slowly drive past my house. Once. Twice. 3 times. Like a shark circling water. 2 weeks later, the moving truck arrived. Security guards supervised. I sold the house quietly. Transferred the money into the trust. Changed my phone number. Closed my email. And vanished. No forwarding address. No Gouvier. Just gone. 6 months later, I was painting again. In a bright apartment overlooking a garden. Drinking tea with new friends. Dancing badly with Victor. Yes, I found him again, who laughed and said, Ah, destiny has terrible timing but excellent aim. I was healing. I was free. I was finally living for myself. Until one afternoon, the receptionist knocked on the studio door. "Margaret," she said carefully. "There's a man here asking for you." My heart dropped. "He says he's your son." When the receptionist said those words, "He says he's your son," I felt something strange. Not fear. Not panic. Relief. Because for months, I had been waiting for this moment. The reckoning. I didn't invite him to my apartment. Oh no. If he was going to perform, he was going to do it in public. I told the receptionist, "Please bring him to the community lounge." When I walked in, he was already standing, holding a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers. Of course he remembered that. He always remembered the things that worked on me. "Mom," he said, rushing forward, eyes shining, voice trembling just enough. "Oh, thank God you're alive." Alive. As if I'd faked my own death. "Sit," I said calmly, pointing to a chair. He blinked. Saturday. I sat across from him, crossed my hands, waited. He launched immediately into the performance. "We've been terrified," he said. "You disappeared. No calls. No address. Clara cried for weeks. The kids think you hate them." I smiled. Softly. "Is that what you're worried about?" I asked. "Or are you worried about where the money went?" His mouth opened, closed. Then he laughed nervously. "Mom, what are you talking about?" And there it was. The lie. So smooth. So natural. I leaned forward. "You forgot to hang up the phone." Silence. Not the awkward kind. The deadly kind. The color drained from his face in slow motion. I heard everything. I continued gently. Every plan. Every joke. Every insult. His hands began to shake. "No, you didn't. I heard you call me stupid." He swallowed. "I heard you planning to sell my house." His eyes flicked toward the door. "I heard you talk about putting me in a cheap home so you could take my insurance money." He finally whispered, "Mom, please." And then something fascinating happened. He stopped pretending. The mask slid off. And the man underneath was colder than I ever imagined. He leaned back in his chair and sighed. "Well," he said flatly, "since you know." Just like that. No apology. No shame. No guilt. "Do you have any idea how stressful it is taking care of an old parent?" He continued. "Always worrying you'll run out of money and become our responsibility?" I stared at him. "You were never responsible for me," I said quietly. "I paid for your college, your wedding, your first house." "Yes," he snapped, "and now it's our turn to benefit. That's how family works." I almost laughed. Family works by stealing from widows? "You weren't using the money," he said irritably. "It was just sitting there." It was like listening to a stranger. Worse, like listening to a thief justify himself. "What did you come here for, Daniel?" I asked. He hesitated, then said the truth. "The accounts are locked. The house is gone. The trust won't release anything. Clara's furious. The kids are struggling. We need access again." There it was. The real reason. I stood up, looked down at the boy I once rocked to sleep. "You will never touch my money again," I said calmly. His face hardened. "You can't just cut us off," he said. "We're your family." "No, iraplia sufli. You're my relatives. There's a difference." Then he did exactly what my lawyer predicted. "You're not thinking clearly," he said slowly. "This paranoia, disappearing, hearing things on the phone." Ah, there it was. The insanity card. "I think you need help," he continued gently. "Maybe a doctor should evaluate you, just to be safe." I smiled. A real smile. "Oh, that's already been done." He froze. "I have 2 doctors, a psychologist, and a full legal record stating I'm mentally sound," I said pleasantly. "And I also have a documented witness statement from my sister about the phone call." His jaw dropped. And I added, "If you try to challenge my competence, my lawyer will countersue for elder financial abuse." The word abuse hit him like a slap. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You would destroy your own son?" I looked at him sadly. No, Daniel. You already destroyed yourself. He stared at me for a long time. Then tried one last tactic. Tears. Real ones this time. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered. We were desperate. We didn't mean to hurt you. I waited. Let the silence stretch. Then said quietly, apologies given only after you get caught are not apologies. He nodded slowly, picked up the lilies, left them on the table, and walked out without another word. That night I cried. Not because I missed him, but because I finally accepted something I had avoided my whole life. Sometimes, the people you love the most are the ones most capable of destroying you. And loving them does not mean letting them ruin you. 3 weeks after my son walked out of that lounge, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, written in my son's handwriting. My hands started shaking before I even opened it. Inside were court papers. Not a letter. Not an apology. A petition. Filed by my own child, requesting that I be declared mentally incompetent, so the court could appoint him as my financial guardian, so he could take control of everything. I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I was going to scream. Ruth came over that night and read the papers 3 times. He's accusing you of paranoia, confusion, memory loss and delusions, she said slowly. According to this, you imagined the phone call. Of course I did. Classic. If you can't steal from her, declare her crazy. He's requesting emergency authority, Ruth added quietly. If the judge signs this, he gets temporary control of your accounts until the hearing. My chest tightened. That meant my money, my home, my life, all back in his hands. By morning, we moved fast. My lawyer, Miss Calder, became a hurricane in heels. She filed objections, submitted doctor reports, attached the signed transcripts from the bank, the trust documents, and my favorite part, a sworn statement from the bank employee who had overheard my son shouting on the phone when his access was removed. But the worst part wasn't the paperwork. It was the phone calls. They came nonstop. From unknown numbers. From blocked numbers. From relatives I hadn't heard from in decades. Margaret, your family is worried about you. Sweetheart, why are you punishing your children? Daniel says you're confused and being manipulated. Manipulated? By who? My 84-year-old sister with arthritis and a knitting addiction? Then came the fake emergency. At 2 in the morning my phone rang. A hospital. A trembling nurse voice. Mrs. Hale, your granddaughter has been in an accident. My heart nearly stopped. I threw on clothes and rushed there. Only to find. No granddaughter. No accident. No nurse. Just my son waiting in the lobby. Smiling. See, he said gently. You're confused already. That was the moment I almost broke. I went home shaking. Cried until I was sick. For the first time since this began, I thought, maybe I should give in. Maybe it was easier. Maybe losing the money was better than losing my sanity. 2 days before the hearing, something unexpected happened. Victor showed up at my door. With a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. His daughter. A senior prosecutor. When I told them everything, she went very quiet. Then said a sentence I will never forget. This isn't guardianship. This is organized elder exploitation. She took my case for free, filed a criminal complaint, subpoenaed bank records, requested recordings, and demanded my son's financial history. The courtroom was silent the day of the hearing. My son sat across from me, confident, smiling. His lawyer argued that I was confused, that I had been brainwashed by outsiders, that I was delusional about a phone call that never happened. Then my lawyer stood and calmly played an audio recording from my phone, because I had recorded the call by accident. Every word, every laugh, every plan. She's too stupid. Once she signs, drain her. You could hear my son's voice, clear as glass. The judge closed his eyes. Slowly. When the recording ended, the courtroom was silent. Then the judge looked directly at my son and said, "Sir, you are a disgrace." The petition was denied. The guardianship request dismissed. And then, the prosecutor stood up and said the words my son never expected to hear. Your Honor, we would like to open a criminal investigation for elder financial abuse, fraud, and conspiracy. My son turned pale. Very pale. He was arrested 3 weeks later. So was my daughter-in-law. My grandchildren were charged with financial coercion. Plea deals were made. Money was returned. Not all of it, but enough. And I testified. Against my own child. With a steady voice. And no regret. The day the case ended, I went home alone. No reporters. No celebrations. No victory speeches. Just me and silence. But this silence felt different. Not empty. Peaceful. For the first time in years, no one was calling me for money. No one was pretending to love me. No one was planning my future behind my back. My life finally belonged to me. The court ordered most of the stolen money returned. Not everything. Some had already been spent on cars, vacations, renovations. Funny how greed always moves faster than justice. My son avoided prison by taking a plea deal. Probation. Mandatory counseling. A permanent restraining order preventing him from contacting me. My daughter-in-law lost her job when the case became public. My grandson had to sell the sports car he'd bought with my savings. My granddaughter moved back into a tiny apartment and suddenly found herself again. They never apologized. Not once. Their lawyers apologized. Their faces apologized. But their mouths never did. And that told me everything I needed to know. People often asked me if it hurt. Losing my family. Of course it did. Some nights I still woke up reaching for the phone. Forgetting for one terrible second that the son I raised no longer existed. But grief changes. It softens. It becomes a memory instead of a wound. And something unexpected grew in its place. Freedom. I stayed at the retirement village. Turned the small den into a proper studio. White walls. Big windows. Sun every morning. I painted more in 6 months than I had in the previous 10 years. Pain does strange things to creativity. It makes colors deeper. Shadows more honest. One afternoon, my painting won first prize at the community exhibition. A red sticker on the corner. Best in show. I laughed so hard I cried. 79 years old. And my first trophy. Victor and I became inseparable again. He still danced terribly. I still stepped on his feet. Every Saturday we cooked together. Sometimes burned the food. Sometimes ordered pizza and pretended it was planned. He never asked about my money. Never asked about my family. Only once did he say softly, "You are stronger than you know." I believed him. Ruth visited every week. Brought gossip. Brought pastries. Brought love. The kind that doesn't come with invoices. I made new friends. A former teacher who loved mystery novels. A gardener who gave me tomatoes. A yoga instructor who laughed when I fell over and fell with me. They didn't know my past. They only knew me. And that was enough. Months later, I received one final letter. From my son. Written carefully. Neatly. Mom. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know. I'm sorry. I read it once. Folded it. Put it in a drawer. Not because I forgave him. But because I no longer needed anger to survive. Some doors are not meant to be reopened. Now every morning, I sit by my east-facing window. Set up my easel. And paint. Sunrises. Gardens. Women standing alone. And strong. I am no longer someone's resource. No longer someone's victim. No longer someone's backup plan. I am Margaret. An artist. A survivor. A woman who learned, very late, but very clearly, that family is not about blood. It's about respect. Love. And choosing people who choose you back. And at 79, I finally chose myself. Please click the subscribe button, like, share and comment. This will encourage me to make more interesting stories. Also, let's know where you are watching from. Thank you and see you in the next story.